Hello. I want to thank you for um, organizing this conference, bringing all these kindred spirits together. I want to attest that Giuseppe de Dona is not the only person with a sundial on his driveway. Um, as Roger Tarenti said, um, you can have interest in people's interest in sundials comes from the timekeeping and the astronomy, history, culture, art. There's plenty of material for anyone who's curious. If you're of a mathematical bent, the physical principles and the relevant mathematics are generally the starting point to becoming a dialist. A second approach is to utilize the tools that a mathematician has made, either a physical tool like a Searle's ruler or a computational tool like shadows or orologi solari, something like that, to design sundials. But for my sundial, my first sundial, I did neither of those. Gardening around my home has been my primary concern in my outdoor spaces, but I had a big blank wall on the side of my garage, which was kind of boring. And since I worked in the laser industry, I had collected a number of mirrors that I had been experimenting with for tiling, mosaic pictures, and the like. I thought that a mosaic of mirrors projecting an image made of sunbeams onto that garage wall could be pretty. However, the garage wall was 4 meters away from the only continuously sunny spot in my garden, and I wanted to know what it would be like throughout the year. So I went to the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration's solar position tables on their website, and I figured that given the sun's position at any time of day or year, I could just perform a vector reflection, mathematically project it onto the wall, do a coordinate transformation, and calculate the sunspot location, right? I'm set. So using NOAA's tables, I confirmed that any reflected image would be seasonal at best. The image, who wants to be forever telling visitors that the image on the wall is very pretty, but you have to come back in 6 months to actually see it. So what could I salvage out of this? So I thought maybe I could tell time. I wasn't thinking in terms of sundials at that point. I was still ignorant of sundial math, spherical triangles, and the equation of time. But I spent a lot of time outside tending my plants and trees, often losing track of time. What if I could tell the time, or at least what hour it was, without having to set down my tools and get to my watch? What I imagined was a series of colored spots, one for each hour, of different colors, that over the course of the day would traverse that blank space, and by the color of the spot in a defined space, I could tell approximately what hour it is. I thought about this for a few days, and I saw no reason why I couldn't trust these color spots to do more than just note the hour, but to really tell the time. So to see what happened, with one mirror, I calculated the reflection location on the wall. And over the course of the year, we of course get what we now know, what we call the solar analemma. I have this pink square here is the space on the wall that's available for me to project on, 7 feet by 12 feet. And I have the solar analemma there. So it doesn't quite fit in that area. So I thought, well, let's put another mirror in there and look at it for different hours. So with 2 mirrors, moved to reflect the analemma differently, I can indeed get the analemma all within that space, but in two halves, and I could see how it progresses over the course of the day. So a couple things noted is that I plotted the true time with the analemma here for each hour, and I see that there's some rotation going on, some tilting, and some change in what the analemma looks like for each hour. So I needed to look at it in more detail. So I'm going to project, put in a mirror for each hour, and I will plot just the true time for each hour so that I can make it intelligible. So what I end up with is a winter series for the winter half of the analemma and the summer series for the summer half of the analemma. And I move all of the mirror reflections to overlap in a certain way. And I can see that there is a relative rotation for every hour from the noon hour for both the winter and the summer. So I see that I'm going to have to build in a correction factor of some kind into the sundial for each hour. But at least I have an idea of what can be done and what I need to do. So I know enough to start building something. So I pull out my collection of laser mirrors and characterized what the spots look like. These are helium neon, argon ion, and krypton ion laser mirrors that I've categorized. And since for telling time, my accuracy goal was plus or minus 5 minutes, so I needed to be able to position a bunch of mirrors to better than half a degree and keep it there. Half a degree is about 2.5 minutes or 5 centimeters on my projection wall. Turns out the adjustment of the mirrors wasn't very difficult. I was accustomed to doing that kind of thing when I was working with my lasers. So here I tried holding the mirrors while I was making the adjustment in the wet adhesive and letting that cure. What I settled on was attaching the mirrors to a metal armature that I could bend into position the way I wanted. Then I would lock that down. And that turned out to be very easy to get the precision and stability I wanted for the most part. So by this time, I'd started to learn something about conventional sundials and their calculations, but this reflection dial was too far down the road. I wasn't going to abandon ship yet. I had already started to map my graphics onto the wall and start to do the painting. I just needed to make reality match the theoretical. So I decided to use a polar sundial as my mirror base, since it can be pretty much just a stable block. So here's my mirror mount. It is a cast, non-expanding cement polar dial with 18 different mirrors, all as dial furniture for the reflection dial on the polar dial to make up the reflection dial. The advantage, of course, is I have a simpler to read polar dial that I can always cross-check with my reflection dial if someone gets totally lost. Plus, I have a legend of sorts where each color for each hour on the polar dial corresponds to the reflected colors of the different mirrors. So the dial painted on the wall shows for the 12 o'clock hour, the summer half of the analemma here in orange, and the winter half in the purple, and the rotation of the hour lines I combine to make a corrective chart here, a sort of a star graph, where for each given day you just look at which hour and you can tell whether you add or subtract from that particular, from the reading you get. So the summer hour, solar hour line is here, and the winter solar hour is here, noon mark. And of course, this includes it gives you the equation of time and the longitude, or excuse me, yes, longitudinal correction just by the time distance along here. And so 5-minute increments here. Here's 1 hour away for the noon line. And then at 2 hours away, I repeated, just for artistic reasons, the analemma. So now I'll show you it in work. I took this video around the equinox so that the mirror series can be seen for both the winter and the summer simultaneously. So here's the 12 o'clock summer and the 12 o'clock winter. And here's the solstice day line, or excuse me, equinox day line. So there's the 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. So I've got mirrors from 9 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon, 5 for the summer. So, so I'm able to just look up on the wall, tell the color, and that gives me the hour, and I can get the minutes. And if I really need the detail, I can extract from the corrective chart here what the time is, the civil time is. So does it actually tell time within the error budget? Well, adding up all the correction factors shown here, the end result was yes, it was better than 5 minutes for most of the hours. A few of the hours go out from the target tolerance but still less than 10 minutes. But overall, mostly yes. I was really happy about this for my first sundial. My wife, however, kept my elation from soaring by pointing out that a calculator is now required to tell the time. So I couldn't argue with that, but that's the way it went. Challenges. The reflection dials are notorious for the challenges of stability and alignment. Luckily, I was blissfully unaware of the history of this kind of sundial when I began this endeavor, and I got to experience the unfolding of all the issues all on my own. Some are errors, some are omissions, and some probably would have resolved themselves if I thought more about it. But early estimation of wall declination I used for my calculations, and I forgot to double check that and measure it more precisely. So that contributed to some error. Another one was that there's 4 meters of expansive clay soil between the wall and the mirror mount. So going between winter rains and summer drought, there was some relative motion going on between the wall and the plinth. Also, there are some details going on in curing or water absorption of the adhesive that was holding the mirrors in place. And that led to some drift and some movement. And then when I was locking all the mirrors down after the adjustments, some of them did move at that point. So consequences of that is I had to pull up my plinth and my brick walkway, and I poured 400 pounds of concrete 2 feet deep to make a more stable base for the plinth. And yes, I did have to recalculate and repaint the dial after about a year when everything had settled out for the most part. The times are still better than 10 minutes, mostly within 5 minutes from civil time. But the most annoying part, that there was a drift to the day lines for about 4 days off the actual. On this chart, you can't see it at this resolution, but every day is indicated on these analemmas so that I can see what day it is. And so the day lines, by going 4 days off, it's probably about 4 centimeters. Got a bonus result though. Some of the mirrors that I used for my reflection had a curvature on them that was exactly twice that of the distance to the wall. So I got a sharp image focused onto the dial face, and I could, for instance, here I show a partial eclipse on the stucco surface. That when I put a smooth card against the dial here, I see a quite reasonable partial eclipse image here. And when I do the same, when there's sunspot activity, I have a good enough resolution in this image that I can resolve sunspots on the image of the sun here. I don't have the photos, but during the June 5th, 2012 transit of Venus, that transit was also visible on the image of the sun. Of course, I'm not looking at the sun, so I have a safe way of viewing solar phenomenon. So my conclusion is this a sundial? A resounding yes, in my opinion. The corrections for each hour complicate the time calculations for hours other than 12 o'clock, but other sundials also require either adjustments, physical adjustments, or setting the proper day or time of year and having equation of time calculations added. So I don't think that's too unreasonable. So the brute force translation of solar position data to a wall is not really that much different in elegance than taking multiple years to plot out an analemma on a ceiling dial. Of course, what I would do differently is a more considered and less cavalier start to the engineering issues would have enabled me to plot this just once. Okay.
Thank you. My feeling is that this presentation will be somehow linked to the next one by this aspect of reflections. I see one raised hand. Ciro, please.
So my question for you is, can you describe a little bit your process of getting the image painted on the wall from your calculations?
Sure. First of all, I started off with an Excel spreadsheet because I was doing everything on Excel, and I generated a coordinates. I established a coordinate system on the wall, and I used some laser levels to get relative positions and make a grid work, a chalk grid work on the wall. And then I would essentially measure the positions of spots for the analemma. Now the straight line parts, like the hour lines, they weren't difficult at all. But the analemma, it was all I had the exact calculated position for each day along the analemma. So I just plotted it, manually plotted it. Different ways to do it, of course. I could have printed it out as an image and using, put punctures in there or pin pricks and transfer the analemma onto the wall that way. But that technique I learned later as I got more knowledgeable about sundials. So I just did a manual plot.
So you were doing like linear measurements with what, a tape measure or something? How'd you do it?
Well, I set up a grid where with a laser level and the reference points. So I knew the positions and the all across the dial surface, and I calculated what it should be on my spreadsheet with my vector projections. So I just had a series of coordinates for plotting that.
Well, thank you. You know, to me, it's one of the most challenging aspects of these sundials is actually making them.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do not see any additional comments. Really, it's very interesting. Especially, I like that fact of those curved mirrors that can project a sharp image of the sun. That was
Yes,
like
curved image
surprising
are,
moment.
yeah, curved images are used in some in a commercial dial that I'm aware of now, where they get a very sharp spot of sun so that better resolution of the time can be achieved. But all this stuff I found out after I did it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.